Perfect. So I'll go ahead and get started. So, a little bit of housekeeping notes, like Joe was just saying, we will be recording this. Takes a little bit to get it on YouTube, just from the editing standpoint. I'll be kind of cleaning it up and have it out hopefully by the end of the day. If you have questions, please use the Q&A. Keep chat for just discussions back and forth. We will be monitoring it, but if you really want a question answered, please drop it there. Again, we will be recording this. And again, my name is Gray Juba. I'm the OT data and community specialist here, a strategist here at FlowFuse. And today we have Joe Pavitt from the engineering team here at FlowFuse, has been working heavily on the Dashboard 2.0 and giving us updates on along the way. And we're excited to have him speak about some of the latest things with multi-users. But so I don't steal any of his thunder, I'm going to just go ahead and pass it over to Joe. Thanks, Joe.
Cheers, Gray. Thanks a lot. Very nice to meet everyone. Welcome to the webinar. Over the next hour or so, we're going to be going through a lot of different content. I apologize if I go fast. I just want to try and squeeze as much in here as I possibly can and demonstrate as much as I can for you guys. If there are any questions, as Gray's mentioned, please do put it in the Q&A rather than in the chat. It just means that we can keep track of what has and hasn't been answered a lot easier. And hey to everybody around the world, please do introduce yourself on various time zones. It's great to see. So, as a quick about me, my name is Joe Pavitt. I'm currently head of UX and design at FlowFuse. And more importantly, for this particular webinar, I am the lead developer on Node-RED Dashboard 2. I have been working on this now for about 6 months. As many may be aware, we are looking to replace Dashboard 1 with a newer modern stack of technology, i.e. Vue.js. And then we're now really in a place where we've just done the first major release of Dashboard 2 and really starting to see some great uptake in the community. So yeah, it's great to see everybody in the chat. And hi, I'm recognizing a few good names in there. But yeah, hopefully we can have a good fun today and I can show you what Dashboard has been releasing in the last few months. So the mission of Dashboard, I shamelessly stole this from Rick Bellotta, who's in the Node-RED community. He phrased this beautifully, and I put this in the last webinar that I did in like October, November time, but I have to repeat it. Our mission with Dashboard 2 is that the easy things should be easy and the hard things should be possible. And really what we're trying to achieve with Dashboard 2 is that you do have a base set of nodes that you can run with and get up to scratch and build something out that's basic but working. And then from a hard things perspective, that's UI template in our particular example, but the ability to be able to customize to any level that you work. I have also just seen questions come in that I am going to quickly address because is important. Is who is FlowFuse? So FlowFuse is a startup. We have a founder of Nick O'Leary, who is the co-creator of Node-RED. And FlowFuse are currently building and packaging technology around Node-RED that allows you to run Node-RED at scale in production, really elevating the Node-RED experience with things like audit logging, security, scalability, and all the fun stuff that you need to run in a commercial environment. So yeah, that's a quick high level FlowFuse. You will see some of FlowFuse today because I am running my Node-RED instances through FlowFuse. But yeah, that's a quick overview on that as well. So I just wanted also to then recap where we were at the last webinar. This is a list of the bunch of nodes that were available in Dashboard 1.0. With the grayed out areas being those that we didn't have the last time we spoke a few months ago. This is now the state that we're currently in. There are some that we still have not yet migrated over. Date picker, color picker, numeric are all actually available inside the text node, text input node anyway. So it's only audio that we have actually got left really that we plan to migrate over. But I also wanted to call upon three new nodes that we have, which are core nodes, which is Markdown, the events node, and the button group node, which went out officially as of today. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of those later on. I also really want to call out, and I'm pretty sure I've seen him pop up in the chat. There's some incredible community contributions already that are coming in. And if you don't know, the Node-RED forums are a great place to go and share your work and have discussions around dashboard and general Node-RED usage. But I really wanted to call out Endel in particular, who's done some amazing contributions and demonstrations as to what can be done with UI template. And actually, I'm going to be shamelessly stealing some of that later in a demonstration as well. But in particular with the button group, which is a really good example where someone requested a multi-state switch as an example. Endel built that as and you might know better as Hot Nippy from the forums, and built that as a template. And that was about like last week, I think. And then this week it's gone into Dashboard Core. So it's a really great example of someone in the community going out of their way to help other people, and then that then as a result is directly then contributing into Node-RED dashboard as well. In the last webinar, we listed, this was again October, November time, we listed 5 kind of key areas where we really wanted to be focusing on. And that was interactive dashboards, so the ability to be able to deep dive into your data, easier onboarding experience, flexible layouts. Now, those 3 we haven't given a huge amount of attention to because we have been focusing on the last 2. And the last 2 is mostly around diverse data visualizations. Since then, we've now released UI Gauge, which I know is a really, really popular widget from dashboard 1. We haven't yet finished it as such, right? There's still other areas that we can expand on it. There's always going to be features that we can add. A philosophy that FlowFuse as a company are embody, and also we're using this within Node-RED dashboard, is that we are working iteratively, right? We don't have to have it perfect and polished and finished every single time. I appreciate, there might be features that are missing when we release UI Gauge and you can't change a label dynamically or something at runtime, but those features will come. It's just that we would rather get something out so that people can play with rather than having to wait another month for a complete package. So that's definitely something that I will reinforce in terms of how we're iteratively building out Node-RED Dashboard 2. And then the last piece is more low-code control, right? Node-RED fundamentally is a low-code technology, and we want to make sure that Dashboard enables you to be able to do the things that you want to do without having to write too much code. And the example on this right-hand side is how we're now using the new UI event node, and we can actually provide admin views, i.e. views within your dashboard that is only accessible to particular people. And we're going to do a live demo of that very, very shortly. So in terms of my demo plans, this is going to be loosely the plan in terms of structure. The first thing I'm going to show is how you can now build admin-only views in Node-RED dashboard, and in particular when you're running through FlowFuse. So we're going to use FlowFuse's authentication that comes with the platform to be able to filter accordingly who is an admin and who is not an admin. From there, we're going to then go to navigation variations. This is something that only went into dashboard about a week or 2 ago, I think, in version 1.2. Where you can now change the way that the appearance is. So rather than having a fixed left-hand side panel as you've always had in the original dashboard, you can now change that. It was a community request that I thought was really good. Then we're going to talk about more personalized dashboard. So this is going to be linked a little bit to admin, but the idea of showing different data to different people and no longer having that central source of data, which has always been a thing for Node-RED dashboard. Now we can have different data for different people, and I'll show how we build that out later. We're going to do a live demo of UI Gauge. Button groups, I rechanged the order, forgot to change the animation order. And then the last thing we're also going to cover is some of the third-party widgets and show how you can take something from a forum and just run it live and get that working, and some of the templates that you can build, and under the covers, the flexibility and power of that. So I'm going to take a quick deep breath, and then hopefully over the next 30 to 40 minutes, I am going to run through all of this. I am then going to be leaving 10 to 15 minutes at the end for Q&A formally. But if you do have questions, please do ask them as we go. And Gray and a couple of other guys that are kind of hidden away will happily answer them within the chat. Anything that's worth bringing to my attention will be brought to my attention, and then worst case scenario, I will cover everything at the end anyway. But right, I think it's time to give this a go. Any questions is a little bit too early for that. I've pressed the wrong button. I'm going to show the toolbar, and we're going to switch over into FlowFuse. So in FlowFuse, we have this concept of an application. And within our application, I can have multiple instances. All of these are Node-RED instances. And something actually I'm also going to demonstrate later is the concept of a device. So I have a Raspberry Pi sat on my desk that I will use later to visualize some data with a gauge and some of Endell's great work as well. So for now, I'm going to go into my webinar Feb 24. It is an empty canvas. I have nothing in here, and we're going to get going. So the first thing I want to demonstrate is actually for this instance in FlowFuse, we have a setting, security setting that allows me to allow only those that have FlowFuse user authentication enabled to access this instance. It's a single click and save. I've already done this just to save a little bit of time, given the time we've got at hand. But it means that if anyone does go to this, they won't be able to unless they are authenticated through FlowFuse and have permissions to access this particular application. But the beautiful thing about working on FlowFuse with this is that if I go, for example, and add now a button, and I can add my first UI group, this onboarding experience is something that we do really want to improve. But let's just call this your tasks. It's going to be linked to something I will show later. We're going to have our dashboard, and our theme is just going to be called default theme. And yeah, group name is fine. So with button, I'm then going to output the complete message object from button. Now, traditionally, when you fire this up, if hopefully I refresh, there we go. We now have a button. Get rid of DevTools. I can click this, and I would have configured something to output payload hello world. So then when I click my button, I see a payload of hello world. Now, what FlowFuse is adding on to this, and the FlowFuse authentication is open source, so like the ability to be able to have FlowFuse authentication is available in the FlowFuse open source version as well. What is currently not open source is that actually in my managed palette, we have now the option of FlowFuse certified nodes. So there's the entire catalog that if you're familiar with Node-RED, you'll know there's 5,000 modules available. What FlowFuse is starting to put together is a list of nodes that we have vetted, that we trust, that we use ourselves, and that we would say, these are good to go and use in your production environments. We now have a plugin available on FlowFuse Cloud that is a Node-RED plugin to allow user session data to be added to your dashboard. So it means when I click my button, which I've just done, not only do I get my payload in Hello World, I also have a client object which has socket ID, which if you've used Dashboard 1, you'll be familiar with. It's the same. I now also have a user object. So I know exactly who was authenticated in my dashboard, and I know all the details about that particular person that conducted that particular event. So that's now what we're basically going to build the next 10 minutes on. The thing we are going to do first is add a template in, and we're going to utilize, I mean, so it's like a fairly standard UI thing. I even have it on here, is that in the top right-hand corner, we show who's logged in. So in our dashboard, we're going to add a little bit of piece of code up here into a UI template that will show us who is logged in. And for this, to saving time, I am going to quickly go and steal the code that I wrote earlier and put in our README. Just to demonstrate this nice and quickly. But fundamentally, I have a UI template. We have this concept of a teleport, which is documented in the UI template documentation, dashboard.flowfuse.com, if you're interested. And if you look in here, there is a section on teleports. I've seen some great work, whose name unfortunately has escaped me, but I think it's Songa, has gotten some great work in terms of doing notifications and all that kind of stuff. We're using teleports, and we have a teleport available called app bar actions, which allows me to put stuff up here. So in here, I can go, right, there's my hi Joe Pavitt, and on load, it just says it's loaded. I've got some basic CSS, and this is actually going to be available on all widgets. So we've now got this concept of widgets being group scoped, i.e. they display in the standard UI, or I can make them UI scoped. They show on every single page of my dashboard. So now I have hi Joe Pavitt appearing up here. So whoever was logged in, it would show their particular username. Just kind of level sets it, makes it look a little bit more complete as an actual user interface. And it allows us again to kind of demonstrate a foundation on which we're going to build today. So the next thing I'm going to do is add another UI template that's going to be starting to build out our admin view. So the foundation of the application I'm going to build today is a task management system. Um, so if I have all tasks, is going to be the next group that I add, and we're going to add this into an admin view, which is going to be available @/admin. I can give it an icon of lock. If you're not familiar with dashboard, we're using material design icons, which is far richer than Font Awesome. So for example, the lock icon is going to be this one here. But there are so many variations of icons that you can use. And it allows me to show an icon in that sidebar, and I'll show something ever slightly different in a moment. And we're going to give this a slightly different theme, just so that we know we're in admin, and it's all going to be dark and mysterious because it's admin. And let's just change it to a slightly different blue or something like that, just so we can differentiate where we are. Admin view /admin, still going to be working in a grid layout. I'm not too worried about what's in the template for now. I just want to have a new screen so that now over here I can see admin view. And notice it's using my new theme. It's got the default template in there with the appropriate styling applied. And I can see my tasks view, which is my non-admin view. And I can see the admin view here as well. Then what I want to do is be able to say, well, actually, I only want admins to see my admin view. So the way we're going to do this is going to be cheating ever so slightly because I mean you would generally use a database to have some information about who your admins are or what kind of level of authentication you want to have on this. We don't currently have access to whether they are a FlowFuse member, team member, owner, anything like that, but it is on the backlog to include that information in here anyway. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have an inject node with a change node, and I'm going to set a global admins to a JSON object, and I'm just going to put my username in here in an array. And then we're going to utilize a new node that we have called event node. So in my event node, every time something happens in the front end, I mostly at the moment is like page views and that kind of stuff. What have I broken? Didn't configure UI event. Um, if I refresh this, for example, now on this side, page view, payload, page, and it can tell me that this user, Joe Pavitt, has done a page view on this page. And if you had something like audit log or whatever it is that you wanted to keep track of, you could keep track of exactly who was working on what. Um, and yeah, we could use that in any way that you needed to keep track of who's interacting with your dashboards and who's doing what behaviors. So with our UI event, what we then want to do is say, well, actually, is the person that's viewing this page an admin? So we can go in here and create a switch node, and we can say that we want to check whether my global.admins contains, and it's going to be message dot underscore client underscore user underscore dot username, and it's going to be is admin. And then so the first thing here is going to be yes, they are an admin, and then we just have an otherwise underneath that that says they are not an admin. So if they are an admin, we are happy for them to see the admin view. If they are not an admin, we don't want them to see the admin view. Now, the good way of practicing and a good practice here would be that our admin view is not visible by default. So we can go in, edit our view, and we can say, actually, by default, our admin view is hidden. So if I deploy this now, on my side navigation menu, that does not list. And actually, one thing I'm also going to demonstrate here is if I edit my settings for my whole dashboard, we now have different navigation styles. I'm going to collapse this to icons so that now when I expand it, I see that. When I collapse it, I still see the icons, which makes it a little bit easier to navigate with. Like I say, I apologize for me speaking so fast, but I have a lot of content I want to get through. So I'd rather show it than not show it. So the first thing we're going to do is there an admin? Yes, they are an admin. So we are going to use a change node. We're going to set message payload equal to a JSON object, and we're going to send a JSON object to a control node. If you've used Dashboard 1, you'll be familiar with a control node, but it allows you to specify some form of JSON that you can then control anything, visibility, whether it's disabled, enabled. And if I actually quickly jump into the documentation for the control node, you'll see all the different things that you can do down here. You can do navigation, you can change a page, you can show, hide pages and groups, and you can enable pages and groups as well. And conveniently, that's actually what I want to do. And we can say, actually, I'm going to show my admin view. So in here, I can say pages show admin view. And just in case someone has been sneaky and somehow managed to get to this point, I don't think they would have, but just in case we do classify them to not be an admin and they get to this point, we are also going to hide it just to be sure that they don't get there. Ability to view the admin page, dashboard done, deploy. So now if I refresh, I am Joe Pavitt, I am an admin, I can see my admin view. If suddenly I am no longer an admin, not Joe Pavitt, and I refresh, I no longer have, oh, funky. Did I not inject that? I did not inject that on deploy. Refresh, there we go. So now Joe is not an admin and therefore I have no access to my admin view. So for the sake of this demonstration, I do need to be an admin. Refresh, and now I have access to my admin view again. Now, a question that may be coming up, and I'm hoping, like, if people may be aware that you could probably just go straight to the admin page. There's nothing stopping me if I'm not an admin. Just guessing there might be a /admin path. So if people want to be sneaky, we can also handle that. So if is an admin, we can say, well, if they're not an admin, but they're still trying to access the admin page. So if they're coming in with a page view, we will know that they are trying to access payload.page dot let's go for name is equal to the admin view. And then we can tell them to go away, basically. So instead, we can just say, let's copy in another change node. And we can say, actually, message.payload is going to be your tasks. And what that does by default, if I quickly go onto the UI control docs, navigation, if you just give it a string, it will just go and navigate straight to that page. So here I can then send that up to my UI control node as well. So at the moment, I can access my admin page because I am an admin. If I am not an admin anymore and I try and refresh this page, I get redirected to my page one instead. So now we have the ability to be able to control who can and cannot see that admin page. So I have no access to it here. If I try and go directly to it, I still have no access to it. I'm redirected away, which hopefully shows you, like I say, the basic is admin, is not admin workflow there. So the next thing that I wanted to show, and I'm just going to quickly double check on my notes to make sure I didn't miss anything off. Collapsed icons, good. Form submission, excellent. So that's the basic workflow of is admin view, is not admin view. The next thing we're going to demonstrate is how you can do personalized dashboard. How can we show data to some people and not to other people? So the way that we're going to do this is on a form. I'm going to create a form that allows me to do tasks. So we'll call it task submission. And we're going to have the title of the task with a field task. We're going to have a description for the task, which we're going to innovatively call description. Then we're going to have a due date, which is going to have a field due, and then it is priority, which is going to be called priority. Priority is going to be a switch. Due is going to be a date, and they are all going to be required. And I think that's everything we need. It is going to go on to a new group. Submit new task. And we'll put this onto a new page as well called new task. Um, let's look at a quick, what's a good form icon that we can use? Uh, Form text box looks quite good. Let's use that one. Form text box, new task. So we're just setting up our new page here. It's going to have the default theme. And actually, rather than grid, let's give it a notebook style. So a notebook is more of like a blog article, kind of centralized content. And just as a quick, yeah, the anonymous attendee with a just to make sure we're following the session data of logged in user is part of FlowFuse paid product. That is correct. So it's part of FlowFuse Cloud, or it's part of self-service, self-hosted. If you want to, you can reach out to us and we can give you access to it as well. But it just doesn't come pre-packaged like it does on FlowFuse Cloud, but you can still get it. So we've got our form, we've got that submitting, and let's just chuck it into a debug for now. It was also worth mentioning actually the socket ID data that you get as per dashboard 1 is for all of dashboard 2, no matter where you're using it. So that is available to everybody still. It's just the specific user information is currently only available on FlowFuse Cloud because it's using the FlowFuse authentication. That hopefully makes sense. So we now have a form submission. I can put in a title and can submit my new task and it will output here. So my title, my description. I can submit a date on this and it's a priority task submit. Well, feedback wise, that wasn't great because all that's done is just empty my form and just make it red, even though it has submitted. So what we're actually then going to do is put in a notification and we're going to say, actually, let's notify the user that everything went to plan. So we can set message payload to thanks for submitting your form. And it's worth noting here that as per dashboard 1, if I have included any client data, i.e. socket ID, or in this case, the user ID, that notification will only be sent to me. And I'm going to show a little bit of a variation of that later. So when I submit my other task, description again, pick a date and submit, I now get my notification. That would have only been sent to me. And I will explicitly demonstrate like later to prove that I'm not just making that up. So we now have a notification submitted when we have our form submitted. And what I want to do is make a little like pseudo database. Again, if we were building this out properly, it would go to a proper database. But actually what I'm going to do now is create a function node. And in my function node, I'm going to store the like global tasks essentially. So we're going to have a store new task. And in Node-RED, you have the ability to access flow-based variables and global-based variables. So we're going to have a const of tasks is going to be equal to global.get tasks. If that hasn't yet been set, which is going to be the case the first time we do it, we can have a backup of an empty array. And then we're going to push our new task into that list. And we can see here, this is the object that we get. So I'm going to use some syntax that if you're not a JavaScript developer, you may not be familiar with, but it allows me to merge multiple objects because this is currently only printing out the payload, but we do still have access to message._client as we did for any of the other things. So what I can do here is merge my data and say, actually, I want message._client_user_username to be now part of my form submission without them having to explicitly define it themselves. We just take it out of the session data. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to do global.set tasks. Whoops. So every time someone submits a form, we go and get the we get the global tasks, we push our new task to it with some user data. So this will merge the data that we see here with a user object that we pulled from our session. And actually, let's pull the whole user object rather than just the specific username. And then we set it back to global again. So if we wire that up, and I'll quickly demonstrate this. I have submitted so many forms today. My task, another description, and I'm not going to worry about typos because time. Submit. So now if I go to my context data and I refresh this, I now have, wonderfully, I have some from earlier as well, actually. Um, I have some tasks, and thankfully, Steve has done the job I asked him to do, which is also log into this because Steve is a member of FlowFuse, and he was going to submit some tasks for me in the background that were not my tasks, and there is a reason for that that I'll show you in a moment. So we have some tasks done by me, some tasks already done by Steve. Thank you, Steve. And what we're going to do is on our Your Tasks view, we are going to show my tasks for me, and Steve will see his tasks. And then we're going to make on our admin view all of the tasks. And the way that we're going to do that is we are going to have a template node. But before I quickly jump into it, I'm going to show you some documentation that we have. So we have got a UI table node, and the UI table node is very, very basic. It will take in a array of data and it will just render it. And you can choose which columns you want to render of your data, but customization beyond that is fairly limited. In dashboard one, there was a really great UI table node that had huge amounts of rich visualization options and customization options, but was still constrained because it's the nature of being in a node is that it is constrained as to the types of things like you can, if you wanted to suddenly have a pie chart in one cell, that wasn't something it supported. So a decision that we have made in dashboard 2 is that a UI table will stay as a very basic table. However, it is very, very easy to build custom tables because in our UI template node, we support Viewtify. Now, Viewtify, just to quickly show you, has quite a lot of widgets. And we support all of these natively. So if you ever want to go and do a radio button that isn't the radio button we have, or switch components or anything, file input, one-time passwords, all of these can be used within our UI template node from the get-go. And so what I can do here is, and this is an example I've included in our documentation on dashboard.flowfuse, is that I've not only just rendered my data, I've also done a linear progress bar. And to get started with that, I can copy this and go back to my flow. I'm going to add in a new template down here that's going to be called my tasks. And I'm just going to replace all of that with this, and I will explain what this is doing in a moment. And it's going to go in here. I'm going to quickly just call this your tasks, if I can spell correctly. And let me just quickly explain what this template is doing. So we're using Vue.js for template nodes. And the Vue.js component is broken up of 3 pieces. It has a template, which is the HTML. It's the structure and visual layout of the things that you're trying to build. It has a script section, which is your functionality. If you want to have some JavaScript functions or any of that kind of stuff, chuck it in there. And then if you want to have custom styling, which in this case we don't have, but you can also chuck in a style tag at the very, very end, which allows you to put in CSS and override anything you absolutely like, which Endel is a genius at. And I will show you some of his great examples of using UI template nodes a little later. So what we can do in here is we have a V data table, which again is a Viewtify component. If I quickly show you the documentation for this, you can go in here and any of these examples, you just click this button and it just shows you how to go and run it and build it. What you can do is override how particular cells are rendered. So we have a load of data here on this side. This is coming from our documentation. So we don't need header current. And we also then don't need any of the other bits. So let's work out quickly. We don't need to change of our headers. So we're not going to worry about that. We are going to change item dot, let's do priority. And item is just the row. So item dot priority right now, if I rendered that inside it, I don't need to do a degree symbol because we're not worried about that. Item dot priority right now is if I just put the word custom just to prove that this is actually running something custom in your tasks, deploy. In my tasks, I have no data. Excellent. I forgot about that part. So currently we have no data. And because this is going to be my tasks, I only want when data is sent to this for me to see it. Now, traditionally in dashboard one and currently with most of dashboard two, other than UI notification and UI control, nothing else accepts what we call client constraints, i.e., particular socket or particular user. With the FlowFuse Authentication plugin, there is now a new tab over here that says, actually, I would also like UI templates to accept client constraints. So now if I deploy that, whenever I send data to my templates, it's only going to be sent to the person that is specified. So for example, I can put a UI event at the start of this, and that will say then, because that just automatically gives me the user data. It gives me the user data that they're viewing. And I can then also in here, because I need to get access to my global tasks thing as well. And at the moment, we can't get access to global data inside a template. So I need to change the scope of it. So I want to set message payload to the global.tasks and deploy. And now if I refresh, I now have all of my tasks, which is nice because that worked. Now, we definitely see some rooms for improvement in terms of areas for improvement in terms of visualization. I'm also going to make that table a bit bigger. So if I go into my group, I can make that 12 wide. So we're currently working on grid layout, which means that unlike dashboard one, is not a fixed width. If I resize this, it will resize with me. And that's something that was very, very important when we built out dashboard two. When you go down to, and it follows the bootstrap model. So by default, there's like 12 columns. So you can define 6, 9, 12, and you'll be a proportion of that. So 12 columns will fill that space. So our tasks, I don't need my button anymore. I can delete that just for clarity. And so now I have my tasks. If I refresh this each time, it's going to go and get that data fresh because it's going to get it from here, or you could do it as an API call or retrieve some data from the database. And that's then my template. Now, if someone else was to go and view this, at the moment, they're going to see the same thing as me because all we do is go and get global tasks. What I actually want to do is filter it. And so I'm going to add in a function node. And again, this would be done by like a database query or something like that. But for simplicity's sake, we're just doing like in memory example here. We're going to do message.payload is message.payload filter, and we're going to have a task, and I only want tasks that returned that are mine. So if the task.user.user ID is equal to the incoming message, because we're coming from an event node, and it's going to be underscore client underscore user underscore user ID. So now that will just make message payload equal to the tasks where the task is owned by the person that's viewing that page. Now, when I deploy and I refresh, notice now that one task is missing. It's only the tasks that belong to me. Let's just quickly tidy that up. And I'm a little cautious of time, so I may have to just skip something very quickly here, which is I built some other templates out that make this look a little bit nicer. So I stole the user thing from the top right-hand corner, put that into the table, and then I also did a little calculation that shows the number of days between the due date and today. So now when I render it, I can see that it's actually due in 13 days or in 1 day. It was my user, and the priority has an exclamation mark because in the table here, my rather than just rendering priority, I actually say vif, which is Vue's way of like conditionally rendering something. If it's a priority, render this icon, make it red, make it aware that someone has put this thing as a priority. So that's one of the reasons why amongst others, that we have decided not to go for a more customizable UI table out of the box, purely because it is fairly straightforward. I appreciate for non-JavaScript people or non-HTML like view people, this may be a bit more intimidating, but the flexibility you can get in terms of how you can render table data just by using a UI template is far more superior than anything we could put into a customizable node that was configurable and all that fun stuff, right? So that's the reason we've chosen that philosophy, and it also comes up with like search by default, right? So it's just really really nice way of working. So what we're going to quickly demonstrate, and I just need to add myself back as an admin so that I get access to my admin view, is I have my tasks, I have my admin view, going to quickly move that down so it shows at the bottom. So I have my admin view, I have my submission, I have my other tasks on my admin view now, rather than having the default template, which was that one, I think. Let's chuck this down here. That's going to be all tasks, and it's going to go, it's a widget scope, and it's all tasks. Good. Let's make that 12 wide, as per the other one. And essentially, we want to do the same thing, but we only want to do it if they are viewing the admin page. So uh, we are going to steal that one, I think, if I remember rightly. No, that's setting the view. We don't want that. We are going to, that is a mistake. That should have been a switch node, I think. Is an admin. Event node comes in. We want to check if they are on the admin page. If they are, yeah, if they are an admin, so we want to go up here. So is an admin, are they also viewing the admin view? Uh, admin view. You out of the way. Is an admin? Yes. Are they looking at the admin view? Yes. Go and get all of the tasks and render it in the table. So now when I refresh, it doesn't do anything because of reasons why I don't know. Huh, that's fun. Is an admin, is the admin view, payload not name. Why didn't that work? It's still rendering my old one. Uh, in the interest of time, I'm going to have to move on, and I don't know why uh, that isn't working, which is a bit strange. But what should have happened, and just trust me on this, because it did work the 3 times that I practiced before, um, is that I would get all of the tasks. So is an admin? Yes. Is it an admin view? Yes. And then we would set message payload to global tasks, and we would render them all. Oh, it's because that'll do it. Because I didn't update my template. There we go. See, worked every time. That glitch didn't happen. We can edit that out in post. So that is admin view. That is custom data. That is form submission and on all that fun stuff, which hopefully gives you a really good insight on how we can utilize this message client user object. Now, what I've got 5 minutes left to demo, which I'm fairly confident I can do, is the visualization stuff. Now, for this, I have a Raspberry Pi, and I'm going to use the FlowFuse device agent. So, on our webinar application in devices, I'm going to add a new device on FlowFuse, which is going to be called Joe's Raspberry Pi, and it's a 5.5. Add and shout out to Steve, who recently implemented this. And it's now a single line command using our FlowFuse device agent. We use a one-time password. That means that I can just do this copy paste onto my Raspberry Pi. Cannot create because I didn't run with sudo. Um, there we go. That's now set up. And sudo FlowFuse device agent. I have a Pi sat on my desk that I just SSH'd into. It's currently installing dependencies. If I jump back over into FlowFuse, I can now see my Raspberry Pi. It was seen 8 seconds ago. I can log in and see my device logs, which is there. It's reflective of what's running locally on my own machine. This is currently running on FlowFuse Cloud. Starting Node-RED, and we have started some flows. Now, this by default runs in what we call fleet mode, which is if you have 100 devices, you wouldn't necessarily want to go in and edit each individual one. You can use, within an application, we have this concept of DevOps pipelines, and it allows you to push out to 100 devices in one click. Instead, here, what I'm actually going to do is just run in what we call developer mode, which says that I can then get access just to that one instance. So it sets up a tunnel between my Raspberry Pi and FlowFuse Cloud, and I can then get access directly to my editor wherever it is in the world. So it takes a little while the first time, just whilst it kind of sets up the relevant security parameters. But once this is running, I will be modifying the Node-RED flows directly on my Raspberry Pi. Okay, I'm showing this on the same monitor, but this could be anywhere in the world. And then what I'm going to do is I have a sensor plugged into my Raspberry Pi, which I need to quickly install the node for, sudo for X, and install that because it gives me access to my CO2 sensor and my temperature sensor. And whilst that's getting installed, I'm going to quickly introduce another thing we have on FlowFuse, which are called project nodes. Project nodes allow you to communicate between any two instances or devices within a single application. So with here, I have in my webinars application, I have my instance, webinar Feb 24, and I now have my device, Joe's Raspberry Pi. And I can say, actually, any data I've got in here, which hopefully is now going to be my sensor data, I want to broadcast, and it's going to specify it, go to a particular project, and it's going to go to my Feb 24 project. It's going to be called Joe's data, as an example. And we just call that broadcast. And we're going to run this every 5 seconds. And we'll do it once at startup because it takes a little while. The first time it takes like 5 or so seconds just to make sure. Again, I'm running this all on my Raspberry Pi via FlowFuse Cloud. Data not ready, that's fine. It takes about 5 or 10 seconds the first time you do it. And then hopefully on the third attempt, I generally get some data. The CO2 levels in this room, given the amount of talking I'm doing, are probably very high. Wow. Okay, I need to take a break shortly. Anything over 1,000 parts per minute, by the way, is not good. Yes, if I suddenly collapse, you know why. So we've currently now broadcasting that data to our Feb 24. We then have the concept of a project in here, and under the covers, this is just MQTT. And so what I've actually utilizing the MQTT broker that comes with the FlowFuse instances, and this is going to be Joe's data, and we can receive it directly. And just as a quick starting point, we can say, actually, now just give me all of my data. And now every time that transmits, hopefully over on this side, there we go. We are now getting live data from my Raspberry Pi to FlowFuse Cloud. And you could run this for 100 devices, right? So the idea being that in my broadcast, I could run that and deploy this out to 100 devices. All of them could be reporting into my single instance on Node-RED on FlowFuse Cloud. And I could then go in and visualize all of that data, which is what we're going to do now. So I'm going to make a gauge, and it's going to visualize my temperature data. A little cautious of time, so I am going to go and speed up on this a little bit. And our temperature data is currently going from 0 to, let's say, 40. Just for simplicity, I'm not going to make this anything too grand and accurate, but let's just do 25. Gauge, a suffix I am going to put in. And you can also put in icons here, so thermometer. And we can change thickness of the gauge and all kinds of fun stuff. So if I now deploy that out, I'm not sure where that's put it. It's put it on the admin view, but that's fine. So the next time that we get some data, I know what's going to happen here. It's going to look horrendous when it comes in. It also helps if I wire it up. But that's fine. There we go. All of the object, because I knew that was going to happen, but didn't actually fix it. So then we're going to jump in here, hit change. We're going to set message payload to message dot payload dot temperature. Done. Deploy. And then the next time it comes in, we should get a really, really long number. There we go. And then the last thing I'm going to do is because we don't currently support formatting within the gauge, I just have to do that manually in a function node. Um, but I can just say, just show me one decimal place. And now the next time I get the data, it should refresh. And there we go. We now have 31.2 as a bit of temperature coming in. The last thing I'm going to demonstrate, and then we'll go on to 10 minutes of questions, is because it's beautiful work that Endel has done. I needed to call this out. This is all running in a UI template node. And so the idea here is that I can now just go and take Endel's work and copy it over and drive this into my own UI template node, replace all of that. Let's call this vertical stuff because my brain is starting to get a little bit fried. Um, let's go on a new page called data, gauge, default theme. Yeah, grid's fine. Group name's fine. Vertical stuff, and I'm going to quickly change it so that it gives me a vertical type. It's going to go from 0 to 1500. When I demoed this earlier, my maximum was 1000. I have been in this room for far too long. And then, yeah, you can play around with the colors. It's beautiful work that he's done. I had to call it out. The only other thing I do need is the CSS. So I can copy that as well. And you can put that into the same node if you really want to. But just to make it easier to read, I've been putting it into a separate thing. And rather than it being a widget, I can just say it's CSS. Endel, just as an FYI, because I've seen you on there, I noticed it needed a min height when I practiced this earlier in that little thing at the bottom. Hit the play, and then hopefully, if I go to my gauge, we now have a linear gauge rendering, which is nice. But I don't currently have any data going there. So let's move this guy into that same group. And we're going to set message payload to CO2 concentration. So now when my Raspberry Pi emits some data, if it deploys, there we go. And then hopefully the next time we get an update, he says confidently, because, good demo, Joe, that was unintentional. The reason that hasn't worked is because earlier I toggled on that templates should only accept data when there is a client constraint. And currently we have no client constraint. So in here, what I actually need to say is that don't worry, this is definitely underscore client underscore user ID, and my user ID for memory and definitely not looking at my notes is OPA GNQ GE0D, which forgive me for not remembering off the top of my head. So now if I render that, there we go, straight away. I've now said, look, don't worry, this is this is the right person to send this to. If anyone else was looking at this, they wouldn't be able to see this data. So now that's live updating with both temperature and CO2. I appreciate that was a lot of content. And I'm 5 minutes over where I wanted to be. And you can understand why I had to speak so fast, but hopefully it gave you a really good overview on what we've added into Dashboard for the last few months, the ability to be able to do client-specific and user-specific data, and also a little bit of a show-off of some of the great work that Steve's been doing on the device agent and how you can have remote devices running through FlowFuse. Again, up to hundreds of different devices if you really wanted to. But yeah, I am going to go for any formal questions. I've seen there's a few coming in. I'll do my very, very best to answer as many of them.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Joe. I'll let you grab a drink of water if you need it real quick before we start firing off some. There you go. Before we start firing off some questions. Really awesome overview of all the things. I know you've been putting on a lot of work. Yeah, we're definitely gonna see if we can figure out at the very beginning how to break down the playback to 0.25 speed.
It's right. YouTube
So
has it built in just for me. That's what it is.
If not, we'll get Joe to figure out how we could do that. But no, great overview. A lot of good content. Again, we'll be sharing these flows out. I believe in the very beginning, we did kind of answer that question of like the authentication open source and where that kind of played off. So I left that in there to see if there was any additional thoughts. Um, and one of the other questions we had is at some point the option to enable and disable nodes individually with the UI control node, will that be available?
Definitely. Just hasn't been built yet, but is absolutely on the agenda. And you can also, yeah, you can do it on a group by group basis and a page by page basis now. I think already Button supports it off the top of my head. Um, but yeah, yes, definitely.
Perfect. And is the form node going to be configurable through payload? This is blocking my use at the moment. Thanks. Zoom meaning 90 degrees so that Joe can breathe between two sentences.
Um,
But the form node,
Yes, it will be Remy, and I have seen your issue on that. Absolutely, and there's a lot of general like dynamic content that people have been requesting. So, the ability, for example, to change like labels on buttons, to change min and max on charts, all that kind of stuff is architecturally we now have the foundation to do it. But yeah, it just hasn't been completely widely implemented yet. I think I've mentioned before that. Um, we are iterative in terms of our development. Like, right, I didn't want to not put out form node just because it didn't support all of the stuff from dashboard one. I wanted to at least get it out because, for most people, it's usable and functional as it is. But yeah, absolutely, it's on the radar as something we want to do. Um, Will the feature
um,
roadmap be limited for pure node red users versus fewer? So no, so like all of FlowFuse, anything inside dashboard 2 is open source. It's available for everyone. The client user data is actually coming via a plugin that we have built. So as part of just to quickly, because I think I'm still sharing my screen.
you
Um,
are.
Part of the stuff that we now support on Node-RED Dashboard 2, and we very much welcome community contributions to this, by the way, is that you can now build plugins. And this is essentially what we have for the user add-on. So you can go in and you can intercept things. There's multiple different points at which point you can add in anything. I'll leave the documentation reading to another time. In addition to building third-party widgets, right? There were many great third-party widgets for Dashboard One. We support that ecosystem as well, and really want to see more people. And Summit, I have to also give a great shout out, who's actually the first person to publish a third-party widget for UI webcam. I quickly followed with UI LED because I know that was a really popular one as well. But yeah, there's a lot of scalability, extensibility with the base dashboard framework, but things that are in core dashboard will remain open source. 100K devices. I don't think we've got someone yet with 100,000 devices. I don't know the complete answer in terms of actually what scales we promise. My boss is probably listening, so I'm gonna let him answer that in the chat if he wants to. I don't know currently what we commit to in terms of like saying we can support, but in theory, I don't see a reason why not. What is the advantage sending devices data using a project node versus using MQTT? Under the covers, it is MQTT. FlowFuse has its own MQTT broker when we set up our instance. The project nodes allow you to utilize that connection. The advantage of having the project nodes is that you already have then the associated security of knowing that data is only ever being sent between those two particular pieces. It's already there and set up for you. You don't have to go and run your own broker elsewhere. So there's a couple of different advantages there. So yeah, from for security standpoint, ease of use standpoint would be my main 2 points to flag. Is there available a login user interface at Node-RED UI that would allow handle different user logins instead of defining it with an inject node user a demo? That allow how to use the logins. I'm gonna answer that based on how I think that works. So Node-RED you can configure in the settings JS to have its own middleware. You can set up Node-RED with its own authentication. The user add-on that we currently have is only available on FlowFuse Cloud and on FlowFuse self-hosted instances. So you can set up Node-RED with custom authentication. outside of FlowFuse, that's fine. That's a Node-RED feature. But the user add-on currently is only available with FlowFuse. Uh, does user authentication work with Community Edition? My understanding is that yes, the user authentication does. The user add-on is not available in Community Edition. So I think, and then correct me if I'm wrong, ZJ or anyone in the chat, but I think that the FlowFuse user authentication is a standard Community Edition feature. But the ability to then access that data at the dashboard level, for example, like I say, is a team enterprise feature. Or if you're self-hosted, reach out and we can work something out. Are widgets working with touch? Yes, because a lot of the work that we're doing is utilizing the Vuetify framework. So, for example, our buttons under the covers is just a Vuetify button. So, yes, all of that should work. What about virtual keyboards or at least keypads for numeric values? The only instance I could think of where you've got a little bit less control over is the type of keyboard that would show up. So, for example, on Android in an app, if you only want them to be able to type numbers, then you can just show a numeric keyboard. That would work. So, for example, if you did text input type equals numeric, you should, in theory, just get a numeric keyboard. Although I haven't yet tested that explicitly. I know Colin did some great reporting on some of the Android behavior and a couple of bugs, but I think we have actually since fixed. So, yeah, hopefully that addresses that. I'm just seeing some stuff in the general chat. So could you please share the links to the templates used in this session? Yes, and I will actually probably put them into the just raw dashboard documentation as well as probably then putting them up onto flows.nodered.org. If you didn't already know, flows.nodered.org is a really great place for sharing flows, and we can embed those and include those in as well. Which I may or may not do already somewhere in the documentation. I can't quite remember. But yeah, if there's anything that you want to see, please do reach out. There is the general Slack for dashboard content. There is also the discourse community. We have the dashboard 2 tag on the standard Node-RED forums. And then also I will do a quick shout out for Gray's new community that's actually live as of today, which is Node-RED for Professionals. If you are using Node-RED in a professional environment, we now have a Discord server set up for that, for people to be able to share how and what they're using Node-RED for in a professional enterprise environment as well, away from the public discourse forum. Yeah, I think that's all of the questions answered. Is the tunnel used with the Raspberry Pi 5 a Cloudflare tunnel implementation? I don't know off the top of my head. That is something that some colleagues of mine
Steve
implemented.
just answered it below, I believe.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Yeah, thank you, Steve. A tunnel between FlowFuse and Pi is not Cloudflare. No, it's an outbound initiated secured WebSocket. Just to say that out loud. Don't really understand what I just said, but I've read it. Ivan, how to do if you want a grid of buttons, e.g., 10 by 10? Is that possible? Yes. So I do need to document a little bit better, I guess. How to utilize the grid layout, but fundamentally you could make your grid 10 by 10. Something I think I don't currently expose, and I will check this, is at the page level. Yes, at the page level, by default, everything is size 12 right now. So for example, what I could include is a width option at the page level, which changed the number of columns a given page has. So that would allow you to do 10 by 10, for example. At the moment, we'd be limited to having 12 in a given row, or having a group that was size 10, but then you'd have a bit of a gap at the end, which is a bit of a pain. So that potentially feature requests welcome, please. Feel free to put that on GitHub as a, can we please configure the page width at the page level? I'm happy to answer. Do we support the SVG node in dashboard 2? So any third-party nodes, and I mean this generally, all the third-party nodes for Node-RED dashboard 1 are not supported in dashboard 2. Now, I know Bart, I believe, is on this call. He is the author of Dashboard of UI SVG. He and I are working quite closely. I'm doing my very, very best to support anything that he needs, and I will re-emphasize that here, Bart, in front of hundreds of people. Anything you need to make UI SVG available for Dashboard 2, it would require re-implementing everything. UI webcam, UI LED are already up and running. I know there's some great work being done on a UI heat map as well, which actually we're considering as a core node. rather than as a plugin. But yes, for UI SVG, I know work has started, but currently it's not yet available on Dashboard 2. I think that I've just answered every question that had came up. I will quickly say thank you very, very much. I appreciate we're 5 minutes over, but thank you very much for everyone listening. I am so sorry that I speak so fast, but hopefully you can appreciate that I wanted to try and squeeze as much in as I possibly could. And yes, you can watch it back on YouTube at half speed.
All right. Well, thank you, Joe. And thank you everyone for joining us today. And we'll be having webinars again. Keep an eye out. We'll be posting our next webinar here shortly for next month. And thank you everyone again for joining today. Joe, is there anything last you want to speak before I close things out?
There will be, I believe, a survey prompt after this. We do really, really appreciate the feedback to make sure that we're kind of in line with the kind of content you guys want to be listening to and that kind of stuff. So if you do get prompted for a survey, please do fill it out because it's really, really valuable feedback for us.
All right. Well, thank you everyone, and thank you, Joe, and kudos to Joe for all the hard work he's been putting into Dashboards 2.0. Thank you, everyone. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.